I've been very fortunate in my career to work with some incredibly successful people, CEOs of companies around the world, as well as professional and Olympic athletes. And one thing I've appreciated about them is that they're not willing to rest on their laurels. They don't get comfortable. They're always looking for an edge, a way to stay on top or to get even better. Because especially in the competitive world we live in, just staying where you are probably isn't going to work. And what's interesting about that is that these are people in sport and business who've been at their game for many years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So they have all the skill sets, they have all the knowledge, they have all the information they need. So the question is, how can they, and then of course, how can you take your game to the next level? The reason they come to me is because they recognize that they have all the skill sets and tools and knowledge, so what they need to change is what goes on up here. So what I'm going to do with you this afternoon is share with you some ideas I have on how you can use psychological techniques and strategies to maximize your performance in the financial planning world. Start off with goals. Think about what are your goals. Now, of course, goals are a big part of what you do. You set financial goals and work goals and client goals and so on. But the ultimate goal is profitability, or in your case, increased profitability or revenue. But that's the end goal. That doesn't tell you how to get there. So the step below that, the goal you need to set is productivity goals. How can you maximize your productivity? Every time you go in the office, what can you do to get the most out of your work ethics? But that's not even the bottom goal. Because what this all boils down to, and what I really focus on in my work, is performance. What can you do to maximize your performance? Because I consider you people athletes. Of course, a lot of you are probably athletes, but I mean in the broader sense of high-level performers. You're world-class performers. And what you're trying to do is stay at that level or get to a higher level. So what I'm going to do is, again, show you some ideas about how you can do that. Start off with a couple of essential questions. How important is the mental side of business compared to the knowledge, skill sets, etc. that are needed to do your work? Let's take a little poll here. How many of you think that the mental side is less important? How many think it's less important? It's funny, rarely does anybody have the guts to raise their hand in this situation because of what I do. How many think it's as important? How many think of this mental side is as important as the knowledge and skill sets? Okay, see some hands going up. How many think it's more important? Wow, people, wow, I really appreciate you saying that. Unfortunately, even as a psychologist, I don't believe it's more important. Because you can have all the mental stuff in the world, but if you don't have the knowledge and the skill sets and the tools, the mental stuff's not going to matter. But it is an essential piece of the puzzle, and it's often one of the most neglected. I assume all of you went to school and took classes to get your degrees and certified as financial planners. How many of you took classes in the psychology of performance? A couple of hands, yeah, some of you are doing it, but bottom line, very few of you do. And then think of it this way, and I always use the analogy from sport. Athletes, if they want to get stronger, do you think they go into the gym every once in a while and just sort of like pump some weights? No, they're on a consistent, organized program that will progressively take them to a higher level of fitness. Same with technique. There are probably some golfers and tennis players or skiers in the audience. Well, you know, if you want to improve your game, you don't just go out there every once in a while and hit balls or take some runs. You maybe have an instructor or a coach, and you work on your game in a consistent, methodical fashion. Well, the same holds true with psychological aspects of your work and in sport. So, and yet that is rarely the case. Here's an interesting question. Should peak performance be your goal? How many of you have heard the phrase peak performance? Sure. Peak performance has become a part of our achievement vocabulary. It started in the sports world with coaches and athletes, and now we use it in all aspects of life, including the business world. Can somebody define peak performance for me? What's peak performance? Yes?
Well, like swimming, for example, take your whole process of the most important thing occurs, your height and your ability for that peak, and you kind of define that.
Okay, good. So what you're suggesting is that peak performance is being at the highest point in your performance, being at the highest level. And when I came into graduate school, I thought that sounded like a pretty good thing.
At the most important time.
At the most important time, and I'm going to get to that because that's one of the big challenges. And so when I came into graduate school, that's what I wanted the people I worked with to achieve. But then as I became more experienced as a psychologist and as a writer, I came to appreciate the power of words. And it's so important that the words we use are highly descriptive of what we're trying to communicate. And I decided that peak performance is not highly descriptive of what the people I work with, I wanted them to achieve. And let's look at this peak here. What's wrong with peak performance? What's wrong with peak performance?
Not all the time.
Okay, you can't have it all the time, so it's one little point. What are some other aspects of that peak?
Where do you go from there?
Where do you go from there exactly? And with peaks, where do you go? Down. And the nature of peaks is the drop is usually quite precipitous. Another problem with peaks, and this refers to what you're saying about swimmers and other endurance athletes, is that you can't always time your peak. For example, after the 2000 games in Sydney, I started working with an Olympic cyclist. And she was expected to medal at the Olympics. She was Australian. She was expected to medal for sure. She peaked for the Olympics a week earlier. She finished in the top 10, still did pretty well, but she didn't achieve her goal. So I decided that peak performance wasn't the goal I wanted the people I worked with to achieve. But I struggled for a couple of years trying to figure out a phrase that I thought was highly descriptive, and I tried to stay in the geographical domain. So I thought of like Mesa performance or Butte performance, and those didn't quite work. And then one day I had one of those great meetings of time and readiness. I was walking through a grocery store in the meat section, and I walked by the Schlabo beef, and on it was a sticker that said prime cut. And I had one of those light bulb aha epiphany experiences. Went back to my office, looked up the word prime, and it was defined as the highest quality or value. That's the highest quality or value. I finally had my phrase, prime performance, or in your case, prime business. So I finally had my thing. But what does that mean exactly? How does prime business differentiate from peak performance? Let's explore that a little. I define prime business as performing at a consistently high level under the most challenging conditions. Performing at a consistently high level under the most challenging conditions. Two important words in that definition. One, consistency. What makes the great ones great is not their ability to go out and have one peak performance. It's their ability to go out day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out, and perform at a consistently high level. Yet so many of the performers I work with, both in the business world and the sports world, is they have huge swings. Now here's a question for you. See this line here? Is that consistent? Is that line consistent? Yeah, it's phenomenally consistent. It's a straight line. But is that realistic? How many of you are human beings? Raise your hand. Okay, most of you are human beings. That's good. That's good. Now, invariably, there are going to be ups and downs. You're going to be tired, you're going to be stressed, you're going to be sick, things are going on in your life. You can't have that straight line. That's just not realistic. But the goal is to remove these big swings in performance. So there are going to be down periods, that's part of life, but they're not way down. And there are going to be ups when things just come together, but they don't have to be way up, they don't have to be peaks, because you're already performing at that consistently high level. The second key part of the definition is challenging. What makes the great ones great is not their ability to go out and perform their best when they're totally on their game. Anybody can do that. What makes the great ones great is their ability to go out and perform their best in the worst possible conditions when they're not on their game. When they're tired, they're stressed, when they have a really big competition or a really big client they have to present to or a proposal they have to prepare. So, your goal is prime performance, prime business, performing at a consistently high level under the most challenging conditions. Remembering those two key components, consistency and responding to challenges. So, can prime business be learned? One of the challenges about psychology is that a lot of people think that you either have it or you don't. If you don't have it, you can't get it. But one of the most important things I want you to get from this is that prime business skills are skills. They're things that develop with practice. Just like tennis swing, golf swing, whatever it is, they are skills you develop. So if you're not very strong in a certain area, that doesn't mean that's just the way you are and you can't do anything about it. It means you have to do things to develop those skills. And a metaphor I use is, you need to develop a toolbox. And this can be not just a mental toolbox, but a toolbox of all the tools that you have at your disposal. The more tools you can put in your toolbox, the better you're going to be able to handle the myriad of challenges you're going to be facing in your work. And how many of you face challenges in your work? Of course, we all do. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to assume that your toolbox is pretty darn full with the tools you need to just do the basics of your work. So what I'm going to do with you in this next hour is share with you some ideas on how to add some mental tools to it. And one of my biggest goals today is when you leave here, you leave with more tools in your toolbox that on Monday morning, when you go back to the office, you can pull out those tools and use those tools to perform at a high level to achieve prime business. So let's think about what you're preparing for. Super Bowl, the Olympics. How many of you have the luxury of performing just once a week? Or once every 4 years? No. How many of you have to show up and have your game face on every day? Of course you do. I want to be a professional athlete. What a great life. You make $10 million, you work 6 months a year, the rest of the time you have off. Sounds like a great life. But that's not the way it is for most of us. So 2 goals in terms of what you're preparing for. First, yes. What makes the great ones great is, yes, of course, they can hit the big shot. They can really perform when it matters. But more than anything, it's their ability to go into the office every day, go onto the court, the field, and the hill every day, and perform at a high level. That's the first thing. That comes with the consistency. The second part is what I call prime time, or if you're a fan of ESPN's Chris Berman, prime time. And this is that time when you really need to be on your game, with most demands, highest stakes, toughest competitors, most important client or deal or prospective client of your life. That's what you're ultimately going for, because the chances are, during the course of any year, you have a couple of those times when you really need to be on. So think about that idea. What are you preparing for? First, yes, every day going in and doing the best job you can, but also on those couple times a year when you really need to be on, that you're able to do that. One of the tough things about the psychological side of performance is that it's not tangible. You can't touch it, you can't see it. The great thing about conditioning, for example, is if you want to see how strong you are, you go into the gym, you do some bench presses, you do some squats, you do some curls, and you can see how much weight you lifted. You can attach a number to it. Or you go to the track, and you see what time you run a mile in. Or in the business world, there are very clear numbers of revenue and productivity and so on. But the mental stuff is sort of ethereal. And so what I'm going to do with our time today is try to take these ethereal psychological concepts and make them tangible. Make them things you can wrap your arms around. So if you can wrap your arms around them, then you can do something about them. And so that's what's so important for me, is that you leave here with this idea that, okay, I can strengthen these areas, I can improve these areas. To help you do that, I've developed what I call the prime business pyramid. These are the 5 mental factors that I find most important for you to perform your best, to maximize your performance. So these are the 5 psychological areas that I found over my 20+ years in this work to figure out what you need to do mentally to perform at your highest level. So let's look at this. There are 5 of them. Motivation, confidence, stress, focus, and emotions. Motivation, confidence, stress, focus, and emotions. And these are ordered in a very specific way. The bottom ones are the foundation that you need to have set in place. The higher ones apply as you get closer to actually going in and performing. So I'm going to spend the rest of my time with you describing each of these mental areas and then giving you some action points, some things you can actually do to develop these areas. First, motivation. As I indicated earlier, I'm a big believer in the power of words. I think it's really important that we have a shared vocabulary and a shared understanding of what that vocabulary is. So what you will see with each of my mental factors, that I provide you with a definition to make sure that we are on the same page in understanding exactly what I'm talking about. Motivation, bottom of the pyramid, the determination and drive to achieve your goals. Well, why is it so important? My gosh, people, motivation is everything. It's the foundation of everything we do. It gets us out of bed in the morning, gets us into the office, and what keeps us there for hours until we get the job done. And motivation is wired into us, most fundamentally, to help us survive. Back in our caveman days, that motivation got us up and out of the cave to grab our spear and go hunt mastodon, because that ensured our survival. Now these days, in 21st century America, we don't have to go out with our spear and kill mastodon, but we do need to go to the office and do the work to get the money, to go to the grocery store to buy the mastodon. Although they don't have mastodon these days, I guess, but there are other things we can eat. So motivation is the foundation of everything. And what's fascinating is, in the research, is that the longer you are out of school, the longer you're in a particular field, the less important IQ is, the less important where you went to school is, the less important your SATs or your GPA is. What's increasingly important is simply your motivation. The person who works the hardest and puts in the time is ultimately going to be the one who's going to be successful. Effort versus goals. How many of you raise your hand if you have big goals in your work, in your career? Yeah, hands go up. Here's an interesting question for you. How many of you are putting in the effort, doing everything you can to achieve those goals? Now, when I speak to groups of business people or athletes, I always ask that question, and hands go up. Of course, I have very big goals. Then I ask, how many of you are putting in the effort? How many hands do you think go up? Not very many. So here's the problem. If there's a disconnect between your effort and your goals, if your efforts don't match up to your goals, assume your goals are high, you are not going to achieve those goals. Now, there are 2 options here. You can lower the goals to meet the effort, or you can raise the effort to meet your goals. There's no right answer here. It's whatever you choose. You don't have to go for those big goals. But if you want those big goals, you have to align your effort with your goals. So the first question I want to ask you is, are your efforts in line with your goals? And if they're not, why not? My guess is it's more mental than anything else, because the chances are if you're here, you're pretty darn successful at what you do. So you have the knowledge and skill sets and tools. Next, the grind. This is a concept I came up with a few years ago that's one of my favorites. And it goes like this. How many of you love what you do? Raise your hand if you love what you do. Okay, sure. All of you seem to. No matter how much you love something, you're going to get to a point where it's no longer fun. It's boring, it's tiring, it hurts. You want to go do something else. That's the moment the grind begins. Most people, when they hit the grind, what do? They quit. They give up. They ease up. They're not going to achieve their goals, right? What makes the great ones great is when they get to the grind, they say, this is the point at which it matters. And from that point on, they dig in and go harder. So the question is, how do you deal with the grind? Well, I've heard motivational speakers and life coaches say, well, you got to love the grind. You just got to love it. Well, these are people probably who haven't experienced a lot of the grind. Because there's not a lot to love about the grind. So let's think about this continuum. From hate the grind to love the grind. Now, there are people in this world who love the grind. I have a friend of mine. He's a very experienced, multiple-time Ironman triathlete. For fun, he'll ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles. 500 miles, 100 miles a day, great fun. Not many people like that. So loving it is probably not that common an option. But if you hate it, what are you going to do? You're probably going to avoid it or quit. So what I would suggest that the best you can do with the grind is simply recognize it and accept it. Because you have to go through the grind to perform at your best. And here's another thing. Yeah, the grind stinks, the grind is hard, but you know what is much more painful? Failing to achieve your goals. So it's like you pay now or you pay later. Better to pay now, because then you'll be rewarded later. So next time you're in that situation where you're working hard and you're tired and you're stressed and you don't want to do it anymore, think about the grind and think that this is the point at which it really matters. Take an action. What can you do? First thing, know your identity. Why do you do? What drives you? There's a book out called The Identity Code, and by a consultant named Larry Ackerman. Wonderful book. And the idea about it is it helps you figure out what your identity is, why you do what you do in the very deepest sense. And one of the most interesting aspects of the book is this to help you figure out what your identity is. It's to finish this sentence. My purpose and passion in life is to fill in the blank. My purpose and passion in life is to fill in the blank. Now, after reading this book, I read the book probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, and ever since then I was really trying to figure out what my identity was that I could really articulate clearly. And if you noticed on the first slide and also the homepage of my website, my identity is this. My purpose and passion in life is to inspire, inform, and transform. That's to inspire people to change in positive ways, to give them the information to form them enough to change, and then to give them the tools they need to transform their lives. What I encourage you to do is sit down and figure out what your identity is. Because if you can figure out your identity, then everything that comes from it, what's called value expression, is going to come naturally. And you're going to find your motivation. Because most people think that success comes from what you do. But fundamentally, success comes from who you are. And if what you do is an expression of who you are, you're going to work unbelievably hard at it because there's no choice. Because you're simply affirming your identity. Next, have a mission. Going to work is not just showing up for work and doing the job. It ties in with your identity. When you go into work, and if your work is aligned with your identity, then your mission is going to be to fulfill your identity. So every day I go into work, my purpose there is to inspire, inform, and transform. And so there's something to mission. Oh, how many you guys? Some of you are probably old enough to remember the old Blues Brothers movie with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. And there's one point at which they're going to, I forget where, but they're in the car, put the hats on, put the glasses on, and Aykroyd says to Belushi, "We're on a mission from God." And so whether your mission is for a deity or for your success or your identity doesn't matter. The point is, have a mission. Have something bigger than just going in and pushing paper and running the numbers. Because that also is going to drive you. Next, visualize your goals. Now, goal setting is such a part of the corporate and business culture that I'm not going to give you an explanation of it. You know all about it. You have to set goals. The research is very clear. But some recent research has found something that I found fascinating. They found that when people don't just write down their goals, but actually visualize their goals, as they close their eyes and they see and feel themselves working toward their goals and achieving their goals, they're more likely to persist at and achieve their goals. So whether it's at the beginning of a day, looking at your goals for the day, or the beginning of a fiscal year, and you're preparing your goals for the year, don't just write them out. Close your eyes and see and feel them. Because writing them out is a very much of an intellectual thing. But working toward achieving goals is much more than some intellectual process. It's an emotional thing, it's an inspirational thing, it's almost a physical thing. And what research has shown about imagery is when you close your eyes and imagine yourself performing, working toward your goals and achieving your goals, it's not just going on up here. It goes on in here, meaning your heart, your emotions, and also physically. So think about how you can visualize your goals. Have a plan of action. This is a little obvious, but it's so important. People talk is cheap. Anybody can say they have big goals. But the ones who put the rubber to the road, that's what matters. So whether it's at the beginning of the fiscal year or when you walk into the office, know what you need to do. Let's say, metaphorically speaking, let's say you want to go to Chicago. Big goal, I want to go to Chicago. That goal has no value unless you know how to get there. So you go to MapQuest, you pull out your GPS or whatever it is. Or you pull out a paper map, which is obviously old school. Knowing what you need to do to get there is essential. So always have a plan of action, what you're going to do to get there. Last point is surround yourself with motivation. Have you guys ever hung out with sort of downer people, negative people? What happens to you? You get just sucked into this black hole. It's a terrible place to go. And at the same time, have you ever hung out with people who are excited and passionate and motivated? My gosh, that lifts your boat with the tide. So think about your world, your professional world, your personal world, and think about the people you surround yourself with. Do your best to surround yourself with people who are passionate and engaged and motivated. Because if you're around those people, you can't not be. Whether it's in your office, people you work with, or at home, or your social circles. Surround yourself with motivated people, and you will be motivated. From Martina Navratilova with the tennis grade. With motivation, you can be involved or committed. Just like with ham and eggs. The chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. You have to be the pig. You can't just lay the eggs. You have to be willing to sacrifice yourself for the bacon. Confidence. How strongly you believe in your ability to achieve your goals. How strongly you believe in your ability to achieve your goals. Confidence is, for me, the most important mental factor. Because you might have all the ability in the world to achieve your goals, but if you don't have confidence in that ability, you're not going to use that ability. Let's use a running example. Let's say you're training for a half marathon, and you've trained, and every indication is that you can run an 8-minute mile. Physically, you can run an 8-minute mile, but you don't believe you can run an 8-minute mile. You think you're going to crash at mile 10. Are you going to go for that 8-minute mile? No. You have to instill in yourself the belief, along with everything else you do, that you can do the job. Like everything else, confidence is a skill. Again, a lot of people think, well, I've never really been that confident. I always kind of get negative. It's just the way I am. Not true. It's a skill you develop with practice. If you're negative, what that means is you practice being negative a lot. You become very skilled at negativity. Just like, let's say you're a tennis player and you've got a hitch in your tennis, in your serve. Why do you have that? Because you practice that for years. You become very good at a bad tennis serve. So how do you turn that around? How do you change it? By getting instruction and practicing proper technique. And the same thing holds true with developing a positive confidence skill. Confidence challenge. It's easy to be confident when things are going well. Not a big challenge there. The real challenge is your ability to stay positive and confident and motivated when things aren't going well. I'll use an example. How many of you are fans of professional sports? Okay, a lot of you. You go to a game. Team's ahead. Your team is ahead. What's the crowd doing? Cheering loudly. Team's down, but let's say basketball, your team's down by 10 or 15. What's happening in the stands? Nothing. Quiet. When is it most important for the team to feel supported and feeling positive? When they're down. That's when the fans need to be making the most noise. Because you don't think the players in the court notice that everybody's silent out there? They notice people. I've worked with plenty of them. So next time you're there, start a new trend. When things are down, that's when you need to make the most noise. And in your work, in a way, that's when you need to have your internal fan making the most noise. So the goal is when things are down, that's when you need to make sure you stay up. Taking action. Preparation. The single greatest thing you can do to build your confidence is to be well prepared. When I work with high achievers, And I just finished this up with the CEO of a company going into a really important shareholder meeting, and with an athlete heading into the Olympics this summer in London. When I started working with them, I said this: when you walk into that meeting, when you walk onto the field in London, I want you to be able to say to yourself, I'm as prepared as I can be to achieve my goals. I'm as prepared as I can be to achieve my goals. Does that guarantee success? No, things happen. But ultimately, that's all you can control is your preparation. And if you go into a performance unprepared, I have no sympathy for you, because that's the one thing that you can do something about. So make sure, whether it's going to present to a prospective client or preparing a proposal for an ongoing client, make sure you're totally prepared. If you are, you can be pretty confident that you have what's necessary to succeed. Mental toolbox. The reality is, life isn't smooth. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have problems. You're going to have breakdowns. Hopefully not nervous breakdowns, but you're going to have breakdowns. You don't need that toolbox when things are going well. You need that toolbox when things go wrong. Think about this. You're driving down the road, get a flat tire. You pull over, go to the trunk, no spare, no tire iron, no jack, no AAA. You're stuck. But get a flat tire, pull over, go to the trunk, spare, tire iron, jack. You have the tools to fix the tire and get on your way. Same thing here. The more tools you have in your toolbox, the more confident you're going to be. Because you know that if there's a problem, whether you get stressed, or you lose focus, or you need some be able to crunch some new numbers, you have the tools in your toolbox you can pull out to fix the problem and get on your way. So the more tools in your toolbox, the more confident you'll be. Build a strong team. This ties in with what I talked about earlier. The more people you have around you who can help you do your job to perform your best, and that includes both in your office, as well as family, as well as within your social world, the more confident you're going to be. So no doubt, the people who are the most confident are the ones who feel most supported. Self-talk. This is very much a cliche, the whole Norman Vincent Peale back in the day, power of positive thinking. But it's true. What you say is what you do. There's a saying that if you don't think you can do something, you're right. You have to believe you can do it. And like I talked about earlier, self-talk is a skill you develop with practice. If you have negative self-talk, you become skilled at that. You need to turn it around by becoming aware of how you think and changing the way you think. Now here's an interesting thing. Is this positive self-talk? Well, I'm the greatest, I'm guaranteed of success. No. It might be, but it's not realistic. But here's realistic self-talk. I'm going to work hard, I'm going to be prepared, and I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to achieve my goals. It's realistic and positive and controllable. So being really aware of your self-talk, what you say to yourself. For Muhammad Ali, a guy with pretty good self-talk. I'm the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was. Don't tell me I can't do something. Don't tell me it's impossible. Don't tell me I'm not the greatest. I'm the double greatest. He was confident before he knew he was as good as he was. And that probably helped him get to be as good as he was. One of the great boxers in history. Stress. We all know what stress is, but here's my definition. The negative physical, mental, and emotional reaction to internal and external demands. Okay. Next definition, we know what stress is. How many of you experience stress on any given day? Okay, good. You know what that means? That means you have a heartbeat. Importance of stress. First of all, a lot of people think stress is bad. Stress, though, is essential. We're wired through millions of years of evolution to have a stress reaction. Because what did stress do back when we were cave people? It ensured our survival. It triggered the fight or flight response. Increased blood flow, heart rate, adrenaline, sharpened our senses, sped up our reactions. That enabled us to either fight the threat or flee from the threat. Now, unfortunately, the fight or flight response doesn't work as well in the business world. Typically, when faced with problems, when faced with stress, fighting or fleeing won't deal with the issue. So it's a matter of how you can go against all those eons of instincts to respond well to the stress. But most importantly, think about that idea that what stress does, it helps prepare you for demanding situations. Here's another interesting thing about stress. A lot of people confuse hard work with stress. Why do they do that? Because hard work is hard, and it's work. But it is not stress. The question is, when does hard work become stress? Simple equation. When the demands of the situation exceed your resources to manage them. I'll say that again. Hard work becomes stress when you feel you're incapable of handling the demands placed upon you. You lack the resources. So, what can you do? 4 things you can do to deal with stress. First, you can reduce the demands. Push back the deadline. Don't take on the extra client. Or you can increase your resources. Get some new software to help you. Hire somebody to assist you in the process to reduce the stress. Or you can change your perceptions. So much of stress is not just the reality of the situation, but how you perceive it. If you perceive a situation as unbelievably threatening and uncomfortable, you're going to feel more stress. If you see it as a challenge to pursue that you can overcome, same stress, same situation, much different experience of it. Lastly, you can treat the symptoms. Get a massage, go for a walk, breathe, whatever it might be. Last one can work in the short term, but ultimately you need to deal with the source of the stress to prevent that stress from going long term and having a real negative effect on that. So, taking action. Don't overwork. Know when to say when. You might be thinking, oh, wait a minute, when you have stress at work, that's when you really need to bear down and work extra hard. But what typically happens, the research has shown this, that when you work beyond a certain point, what happens when you're under stress? What happens to your productivity? It diminishes, it goes down, exactly. So not only are you still under stress, but you're also not effectively dealing with the thing that's causing the stress. So really important in your work to recognize when you're under a lot of stress, you're going to reach a point when you need to stop, take a break, distance yourself from it. Then, when you're ready, when you're rejuvenated and when you're rested, you go back to it. Your productivity is high, your resources are high, and you'll be able to better manage the stress and deal with the problem. Next, healthy lifestyle. People, we are physiological beings. Stress places an immense physical toll on us. The research is very clear. If you are healthy, if you're well rested, if you have good nutrition, and remember people, food is fuel. And stress burns fuel. And if you exercise and you're fit, research again is very clear, you are going to be able to resist the stress much more effectively. It's going to have less of a debilitating effect on you physically, which of course is going to affect you emotionally and psychologically. Have any healthy outlets? What do you guys do to relieve stress? Yes? You exercise, good. What else? Eat, okay. A nice meal is great. Too much, not so good. Drink, again, in moderation, takes the edge off. Massage, go to a movie, listen to classical music, hang out with friends, be with your kids. The list is innumerable. It's important, though, make sure you have your go-to outlets. Because the way you deal with stress is not only to remove yourself from the stress, but also to create a physiological situation and psychologically and emotionally that is exactly the opposite of the stress. So if when you're stressed, you're tense and angry, do something that relaxes your body and causes pleasure. That's a great way to directly deal with the stress. Build social support. One of the most robust findings in the research on stress is that people who feel most supported experience less stress. Somehow it acts as a buffer. 2 types of social support you should think about. First is technical social support. And this is how to deal with the actual stress. So it might be from a mentor or a colleague, getting more information, helping with some problem solving or decision making. Also there's emotional support from family, from friends. We'll give you a hug, pat on the back, hey, you can do this. So actively seeking out social support. Now here's an interesting thing. When you're under stress, what do you tend to do? You tend to withdraw because you're in defensive mode. You're trying to protect yourself from the stress. It's the worst thing in the world to do. When you're under stress, reach out to people and connect with them. Relaxation. We touched on this already a little bit. Doing anything that produces a relaxing effect in opposition to the physiological experience you have when you're under stress. Last one, smile. This is one of the craziest ones that I came across. I was actually working with a professional tennis player a number of years ago, and she was having a lousy day, couldn't hit the ball, coach was yelling at her, she was so frustrated. She comes up to me in knots and says, "Doc, what can I do?" And out of the blue I had this idea. Smile. She said, I don't want to smile. I said, smile. She said, look, I'm having a lousy day. I don't want to smile. I said, smile. So she goes like this. And I said, hold that. And there was this amazing, over the next 2 minutes or so, there's this incredible physiological and emotional transformation where all the tension drained out of her body, her posture picked up, her face relaxed. You know what my first thought was? God, I'm good at what I do. No, it wasn't. My first thought was like, oh my gosh, what's this about? Went back to my office, did a little research on it. Learned 2 things. First of all, what do we learn? What are we conditioned to believe as we grow up about smiling? About our life when we're smiling? Yeah, we're happy, life's good. Also, and more powerfully, there's been some recent research, neurochemical research, that has found that when we smile, it releases endorphins, our body's natural relaxants. Because we are fundamentally physical beings, as I said before. It's hard to think and feel in a way that contradicts the signals our body's sending us. So try this sometime when you're angry or frustrated or down or stressed. Force yourself to smile. Just smile. Everybody try this. Everybody go like this. People think you're a little crazy, but that's okay. A little craziness will help your sanity. And there's been some fascinating research. Everybody take out your pen. They've had people go like this. What does that do? It forces you to smile. Then they ask people to rate their mood. What do you think that happens after people do this for 15 seconds?
Higher.
Their mood goes up, exactly. Now, take your pen and put it in your lower lip like this. What facial expression does that create? A frown. What happens to mood after they do that? Goes down. So at the very least, next time you're stressed out about something, clench your pen. You'll start to feel better without even doing anything. From Roger Staubach, longtime 2-time Super Bowl winning Dallas Cowboy quarterback. All of us do well when things are going well. But the thing that distinguishes athletes is the ability to do well in times of great stress, urgency, and pressure. You can easily just cross out athletes and put in business people or financial planners. That is what it's all about. Your ability to perform your best under stress, urgency, and pressure. Focus. The ability to concentrate on things that help performance and avoid distractions that hurt performance. Focus is probably the most misunderstood mental factor. Most people think of focus as this. Concentrating really hard on one thing. And that might work if you're a data programmer or an Olympic shooter. But how many of you can focus on one thing all day? None of you can. You've got a multitude of things that you need to focus on. So, importance. Prime focus involves attending to performance-relevant cues and avoiding distractions. There's paying attention to the things that will help you perform well and avoiding things that don't. Poor focus involves focusing on things that will interfere with your performance and getting distracted. And there's paying attention to distractions instead of the things you need to in order to perform your best. Why is focus essential? Three reasons. First, effectiveness. You cannot be effective, you cannot be productive, you cannot do quality work unless you're highly focused. Second, efficiency. You cannot be efficient. You cannot use your time well unless you're incredibly focused. And finally, consistency. You cannot be consistent in your performance unless you're consistent in your focus. Now here's a question for you. What is the single greatest obstacle in 21st century America to effective focus? Email, technology, multitasking. Multitasking. Raise your hand if you're a good multitasker. No, you're not. Raise your hand if you multitask. No, you don't. The last couple of years, there's been a lot of fascinating research on multitasking. And what they found is that multitasking doesn't exist, at least in the work world. Yes, it's possible to multitask, that is, do 2 things at once, as long as the 2 areas don't involve the same type of cognitive processing. So I can walk and talk at the same time, because different parts of the brain are involved. But if you're trying to do 2 or more things that involve the same kind of processing, like the processing of words, you're not multitasking. You can't multitask. Well, because here's the thing. Let's say you have your computer monitor. How many of you have a flat panel TV in your office with Bloomberg or some such? Okay, guys, turn it off. It's a huge distraction. You have your monitor, you have your TV, you got your report, you have your phone with your emails.
The sounds off.
That's another thing. Turning the sounds. You can do with the sound up. No, not even that. And I'll describe to you why you You can't just turn the sound off on your TV and still leave it on. So you've got all these things. You think, multitasking people think that they're processing all this information at once. They're not. What you're really doing is engaging in serial tasking. You're going from a computer screen to TV to report on your desk to your phone. All around and around and around. It's fascinating research out of Stanford has found this, that when you do that, your eyes might be going from computer screen to TV to a report on your desk. What happens to your focus, your mind? It's going like this. You're losing time in making that focus shift. So your eyes are shifting instantaneously, but you're losing time in between. And it's not very much, it's like 4 milliseconds. But when you add that up, it's a tremendous amount of time. Plus, it takes a while, that process, it takes a while to be able to refocus on what you're actually doing. So, jettison this idea that you are a multitasker. Also, related to your question, people think, well, I can just turn the TV down, turn the sound off. Some other research did this. They had people engage in a task, sitting at a desk, with a screen on for 15 minutes. And they asked people how many times in that 15 minutes they looked at that screen. They said on average 2 to 3 times. But the experimenters were tracking their eyes. Do you know how many times they actually looked at that screen? Well, 20 to 30 times. Right. Also, do you know what happened to the quality of the task they were doing? It went down. That has profound implications for your work. No wonder. Exactly. So what can you do to take action? First thing, prioritize and simplify. In addition to my work in the business sports world, I do a lot of work with parenting. I've written 4 parenting books. And there's a wonderful book out there that I read called Simplicity Parenting. And the idea is that our kids' lives are cluttered, both in terms of their rooms filled with stuffed animals and games and stuff all over the place, as well as their days are cluttered with one at school and one activity after another and after another. And that creates stress on kids, and it makes it so they can't function as well. Well, that same principle applies to the business world. That if you live in a cluttered world, your mind is going to be cluttered, and it's going to affect your ability to perform well. So the first thing I suggest is simplify your life. Get rid of stuff in your life, especially in your office, that you don't need to be there. It gives you space, and space allows you to be creative and open and relaxed. Then prioritize. When I go to work, let's say with a senior management team, and I'll ask them, show me your list of goals for the day. And sometimes the list is 20, 30 items that they never can possibly achieve. And of course, at the end of the day, what happens? They're frustrated because they didn't clear the slate. So I ask you, at the end of the day, you've got your list of priorities. Take a look at it and see what you really need to do. Prioritize. What you will find, I assure you, is there are things that A, you don't need to do at all, B, you can delegate, or C, you just don't need to do. Or you can wait till later on. The fewer things you have on your plate, the less often you will be thinking, oh my gosh, I got to get to this so I can get to this. And if you're focused on that in the future, what are you not focused on? What you need to do now. So prioritize and simplify. Remove distractions. One is that TV. Okay to check in, see how the market's doing a couple times a day, but don't have that constant distraction. If your desk is cluttered with a lot of stuff, get rid of it. Clear environment will allow for a clear mind, a focused mind. Create a focused environment. Let's say you have a proposal you need to finish, and it's really important. Turn off the TV, turn off your phone, close the door, stop the pinging and the buzzing of your phone. And so for the next hour, single task. Just do the job. Oh, we'll get to that. Just do the job you need to do. You'll do it more quickly, you'll do it better, and then you'll move on to the next thing. Now, let's be realistic. Things come up. You have to be interrupted sometime. That's life. But at least make that the goal. Another little side note about this. How many of you are addicted to your technology? Okay, probably more than you're willing to admit. It's a big problem. You read about it all the time. Internet addiction, technology addiction. There are actually centers around the country where people can check in. Yeah, to overcome the 28-day programs. But what's fascinating is that the research is showing that this technology addiction isn't just psychological. It's actually physiological. And that vibration, that ping from your smartphone, the ring when you get an email on your computer, produces the same neurological effects as drugs, sex, gambling, and alcohol. What it does, it gives you a shot of dopamine. That's the pleasure drug. But technology is worse in a way, because how long of a shot of dopamine do you get? Well, with tweets and text messages, it's 140 characters. And when you've had a little taste of something that's really great, what do you want to do? Have more of it, exactly. And that's where the addiction comes in. So this is not just, okay, I'm dependent upon my technology. There are real physiological, neurological implications. So, you need to master your technology. Technology is an incredible tool for your productivity, for your capabilities. It is also a dangerous weapon if it's used improperly. Are you able to turn off your technology? Are you answering emails in the middle of dinner, at movies, at concerts, when you're socializing with your friends? If you're not able to turn off your phone, you've got a problem. Because yes, there are people in the world who need to be connected 24/7. The President of the United States, Jamie Dimon these days, although he probably wants to disconnect, whoever has the nuclear launch codes. But the fact is, that most of us, we're not that important. And the interesting thing about technology is, it makes us feel important. And technology gives us the illusion of being productive without the reality of being productive. Last point, as I already touched on, single task. Clear distractions, turn off technology, focus on one thing, get the job done, do it well, then move on. Arnold Palmer, golfing legend. What do I mean by concentration? I mean focusing totally on the business at hand and commanding yourself to do exactly what you want to do. Emotions, top of the pyramid. Intense mental and physiological states that arise in response to situations that influence thoughts and behavior. Very clinical definition, doesn't add a lot to what we already know. We all know what emotions are. Why are they so important? Well, emotions are the greatest obstacle to prime business. They can prevent you from achieving prime business. But you know the other side of the coin? They're also the most powerful tool for prime business. They're an essential tool for prime business. Again, it's how you use your emotions. Let's be realistic, people. Emotions are essential for success, happiness, and relationships. And yet, where do we learn about emotions? How many of you took a course in high school on emotions? No. Some of you maybe take some courses as adults. Where do we learn about emotions? Well, from our parents. That could be a scary thing. Or from popular culture, where on TV and in the movies or in videos, everybody's either totally out of control emotionally or totally repressed. So essential, yet so neglected. You should make emotions a priority in your life and in your work. Interesting thing, whoever loses emotional control first, loses. Now, how things have changed. Back when we were cave people, whoever lost emotional control first, won. Because the first cave person who perceived the threat, who felt fear or anger, they're the ones who reacted the quickest and fought or fled and survived. Things are different now. As I said earlier, fighting and fleeing, generally not a great response to emotional situations you have in your work life or your personal life for that matter. Your ability to stay in emotional control is a key to success in so many aspects of our lives. So take an action. Know your emotional style. Let's take a little poll here. Rager, seether, brooder, Zen master. A rager is somebody who, in an emotional situation, they just react. They just explode. Seether is somebody who keeps it in, then explodes. Brooder is somebody who just keep it in, and eats them alive inside. And of course, the Zen master doesn't affect them at all. Raise your hand if you're a rager. Raise your hand if you're a rager. Raise your hand if you are a seether. Raise your hand if you're a brooder. Any Zen masters out there? Usually one or two. Somewhere in between. So this is not an all-inclusive 4 categories, but they're the ones that I find most president people can relate to. Because if you can understand what your style is, and then understand those situations in which you have these reactions, you can figure out ways to better deal with those situations that cause these reactions. Because emotional mastery is not feeling emotions. It's the ability to identify what you're feeling, to know the cause of it, and then express it in a healthy way. I have a 4-year-old daughter. When she gets upset, she has a tantrum. When I get upset, I try not to have a tantrum. That's what makes me a grown-up. But of course, there are a lot of people who are chronologically grown-ups who aren't emotionally grown-ups. Threat versus challenge. If I had to break down how people respond to emotional situations, to a very simple dichotomy, it's this. They either perceive it as a threat or as a challenge. When you're in a very emotional situation, if you perceive something as a threat, you're either going to fight or flee. Physiologically, cognitively, emotionally, everything that would enable you to perform well in modern day 21st century America goes against you. Yet, if you perceive it as a challenge, when you're challenged by something, what do you want to do? Meet the challenge, overcome it, solve the problem. Physiologically, emotionally, cognitively, all in your favor. All will help you deal with the situation. So next time you come to a challenging emotional situation, think about, do you perceive it as a threat or as a challenge? And how then can you turn it into a challenge? Because think of it this way. You have 2 people, exact same experience. One perceives it as a threat, one perceives it as a challenge. Who's going to respond well and have success from it? Clearly the one who perceives it as a challenge. Responding to frustration. A huge obstacle as you pursue your goals. Now we all know what frustration is. It's this. But what exactly is it and what causes it? Here's the way I think about it. You're heading on the path toward your goal. All of a sudden an obstacle comes in front of it. And it could be another person, it could be a problem with the numbers you've got, whatever it might be. You experience frustration. And frustration is actually a good emotion. Because what it does, it motivates you. When you're frustrated, you're motivated to clear that path. But here's the problem. Usually when you're frustrated, you try to do the same thing you've been doing more and harder. That violates the law of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results. You need to do something different. So, here's a quick step, what you can do. When you get frustrated, stop what you're doing. Separate yourself from the source of that frustration. Create that emotional distance. Then, figure out the problem. What is causing the frustration? What is that obstacle in my path? If you have the problem, then you can find the solution. Then, if you have the solution, you can go back to it, clear the path, frustration is gone, and you can continue on your path. Emotional mastery, touched on it a little bit. Emotions are 2 sides of the same coin. You can't experience pleasure, love, excitement, and inspiration unless you're also willing to accept fear, frustration, anger, and sadness. So it goes to not what you feel, but how you deal with it. So think about how you can then apply these ideas to gaining greater emotional mastery. From Rudyard Kipling, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs, if we can meet triumph and disaster and treat those 2 imposters just the same, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. Wrapping up, so what's the payoff to all this? 1, high motivation. The grind, effort equals your goals. A deep and resilient confidence. When things are going bad, you still believe you can get where you want to go. Positive response to stress. Knowing how to deal with it effectively, figuring out how to reduce it, and keep going. Unwavering focus. Again, people. Multitasking doesn't exist. You're not good at it. It's not good for you. Single task, focus, get the job done, move on. Emotional mastery. Identify, cause, express in a healthy way. Prime business. You do all that stuff, everything else as well, perform at a consistently high level under the most challenging conditions. And this loops around back to the very beginning, the 3 Ps. Prime performance, prime business, consistently high level, challenging conditions, leads to increased productivity, which results in increased revenues and profitability.